So it is now 7:12. I'm gonna give 3 more minutes to the rest of our members, and then we're gonna get started. Just to let you know, Ihan, we have two of our members, well, three of our members are here, myself, Lisa Taylor. Lisa is the chair of the Montgomery County Office of Human Rights Committee on Hate. I believe that's hate and violence, I believe. And Reverend Boney is a past president of the Black Ministers Conference of Montgomery County. I represent the People's Community Baptist Church of Montgomery County, and I am also the social action chair with the Black Ministers Conference as well. We are waiting on Joseph Hooks, who is a member of this cohort, Tiffany Kelly, who is our co-chair, and as I mentioned earlier, Jackie Denard will not be joining us tonight because she has a previous engagement. But I think that we're going to try to get started with the three of us that are here in the interest of time. And Carmen Jenkins is with is standing in for Selena. I forget the name of your office, Carmen.
I'm with County Council, the Office of the County Council.
Office of the County Council. Okay, so thank you. And so she is going to be manning the Zoom call. So I want to get us started. And again, I'm Ron Wright, and I'm chair of the Black and African American cohort for the Montgomery County Anti-Hate Task Force. It's customary, and Reverend Boney will share this to me, that we open meetings with prayer. But because this is a county project, I think it would behoove us to obey some of the rules of the county and not do that. But in lieu of that, I'd like to engage us in a moment of silence for two things. First, I want us to, go in a moment of silence in memory of the victims of Maui, Hawaii. Our brothers and sisters are there who have died in a fire, an enormous number, over 100 lives, and still over 1,000 missing. And also, which is very pertinent, is in the memory of the 1963 March on Washington. As you can see in my background, that's coming up this Saturday, but you can only imagine the number of lives lost leading up to that most memorable moment in the history of Black America, the March on Washington. And before I do that, before we go in silence, I want to kind of lead us with a couple of quotes that I think are really going to shape our thinking tonight. We're going to get as much out of this as possible. But Dr. King once said that the ultimate weakness of violence is that it is a descending spiral, begetting the very thing it seeks to destroy. Instead of diminishing evil, it multiplies it. Through violence, you may murder the liar, but you cannot murder the lie, nor establish the truth. Through violence, you may murder the hater, but you do not murder hate. In fact, violence merely increases hate. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. And then lastly, he is famously quoted as saying, "I am convinced that love is the most durable power in the world. It is not an expression of impractical idealism, but of practical realism. Far from being the pious injunction of a utopian dreamer, love is an absolute necessity for the survival of our civilization. To return hate for hate does nothing but intensify the existence of evil in the universe. Someone must have sense enough and religion enough to cut off the chain of hate and evil, and this can only be done through love." And I take both positions on that. So if we can just do 30 seconds of silence in memory of those two items. Okay, thank you, everyone. Now, as we we sent out an agenda for us cohort members that would start us out with a recap of the discussion we had last meeting on August the 10th. And that was supposed to have been led by our co-chair, who again is not here, Tiffany Kelly. I don't know where she is, don't have an email from her or no call indicating why she's absent, but we will skip over that unless Lisa would like to talk about some of the things we did talk. As I thought I heard during that conversation, you two were going to share notes so that would enable her to recap our discussion on race.
So yes, I was trying to help Tiffany because she's having some technical difficulties. So if you can skip to the next item on the agenda so I can get her on, and
sure.
I'm happy to.
Oh, she's intending to join us tonight? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Right.
It's just where she had same problems I had.
Okay.
So just give me a second. I'll be ready to go after this. Okay.
I think she's on now. She's joining.
Oh, is she? Okay, fantastic. Tiffany, are you with us?
You all, please forgive me. I had the wrong link. I was all the way wrong.
Did you have the 29th link?
Yes, I did.
Is that what happened? Yeah, I did the same thing, and I checked back and I said, no, this is not the 29th.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Lisa actually notified me, and I'm like, I can't believe I did this, but I've been ill and I've been really off lately. So thank you all for waiting for me.
That's okay. So where were we? I don't know if you heard us, Tiffany, but we were going to give you the floor and do some recap of our August 10th discussion. We're also missing Director Stowe. Could someone text him? And Lisa, maybe can you? And then Joe, I don't have either number to text either one of them. I'm not surprised. The weather's been so beautiful. I would want to forget going to an evening meeting this evening myself.
I'm telling you.
Y'all lucky I don't have baseball tickets tonight. I'll be there. So. Reverend Boney will be with me. Absolutely. So. Okay, so Tiffany, you want to get started? I just a little intro.
I was pulling out my notes because I wasn't prepared.
Oh, okay.
So give me a sec.
You want to come back? You want us to come back to that, or what?
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay. Why don't we skip ahead to the questions? During that last conversation, I kind of thought that we would be aided in this process by formulating some questions. So I sent out a very lengthy, kind of lawyerly-like memo introducing those 20 questions, which is a lot, but I think that it sets us in good stead to interrogate this issue or issues of hate crime, bias, and hate incidents as they occur in Montgomery County to certain groups. And I think the way to get to that is you have to put on a case. Some of this we already know the answers to. So that is a good thing that we, when we cross-examine, we actually know the answers to the questions that we'll ask on cross-examination. But most of this, though, we don't know. And I think if we are tasked with coming up with recommendations and solutions, we should base that on some actual investigation and fact-finding and analysis of what we find. So I started us off with about 5 questions, and I did what Tiffany asked, and I put them in Google Doc. Did you get those, Tiffany?
I don't remember. Like I said, I've been really sick. This is my first couple of days being back, and I am very behind on my emails. But yes, I was very ill, so I'm not. I don't think I saw those. But thank you. I'll have to go back and check that.
Ron, do you have them that you can just share now?
Yeah,
share your screen.
I think I just sent yours to you. And let me see. Where's Carmen?
Yes.
Let me send this to you.
Okay.
and then you can share. It's just the 5 questions. I thought everybody had them in Google Docs.
Okay.
Okay. So let me send those to you.
And I did recover the unread email. So no, I did not receive it, but I have it now.
While we wait for that, I just want to let you know I talked to Director Stowe and he's forthcoming.
And had I been on my A game, I would have sent out a reminder. Like I said, I'm still a little off kilter, so I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. So what they're coming, everyone. So they're actually on my computer. So I had someone who's using that in my home, and they're going to send it out to you, Carmen. But what I'm going to do, I'm just going to begin reading them, and then you'll have them post haste. So the first 5 of the 20 questions I sent, number 1 is, of the Montgomery County agencies and organizations listed below, charged with combating hate crimes, bias, and hate incidents, which of these agencies and organizations should the Black / African American cohort prioritize to begin its investigation? And so we got some responses on that from Lisa and from Joe. And so, Lisa, I think maybe we can start with you. Again, let me also preface this by saying I don't expect us to answer these exhaustively at all. It was just a guide. And then also, to the extent you think these questions are inappropriate or don't ask for enough, amend where you can or offer your own questions. But again, the whole idea is for us to make sure that we are not duplicating what the county is already doing, and that we are being exhaustive in our own efforts to add to or augment what the county is doing towards combating hate. So I think, Lisa, you said you would.
Yeah, so my feedback was in love that some of the questions were crafted in a way to receive a certain answer. And so my feedback would be, when we're crafting questions, we want to make sure we get the most robust answer. And so maybe there should be a section for, like, a letter for or other designated organization. And I say that because there are so many parts of Montgomery County that add value to the conversation about hate violence that weren't listed, that we might want to consider. And I don't know all of them because I don't. And I think that we want to, just in that particular answer, be sure that we're not limiting a response that could otherwise exclude. Because I think, for example, the work that I do with the county, as well as the work that, I also work with NAACP, MCPS, those are all formal organizations, but there may be some other grassroots or other organizations that might add value to our conversation that have not so been designated. And I don't know what they are. I just know, talking to others in the community, that they exist. For example, I know from a Spanish speaking meeting focused on helping, which is not part of our cohort, helping people who speak English as a second language, you're calling them emergent multilingual users, about their issues. And so there are some Hispanic or folks who will consider themselves African or Black, and so we just want to make sure we're getting everyone, casting a broad net. That's it.
Yeah, well, I accept it in love, but I do remind that in the preceding memo, I invite amendments, comments. You could have rewritten it if you wanted to. There's no sweat off my brow. But my idea was that, given the limited amount of time and my knowledge of the groups that actually impact our community, these came to mind as the ones that we should first prioritize. The Black Ministers Conference, I would have added there as well. But I think what we already have from MCPD and MCPS, the state's attorney, and information gleaned from the websites of these organizations, even without listening sessions and town halls, we could foment a position on what the county should be doing going forward from our input. But that would be careless, I would think, if we did not involve the other groups. So anybody, whatever other group you think we should investigate, again, we're going to put them in the sack and prioritize, keeping in mind that we're not going to have a lot of time to get through any one of them. If they have published information, maybe that would be the first go-to, but we only have a limited time to conduct, if you will, depositions or whatever, or listening sessions or town halls to glean certain other information about these groups. I will say this about the MCPD information. I wouldn't say, I'm not sure if it's exhaustive, but it is more than anything that we provided good information about day-to-day encounters with hate crimes, bias, and hate incidents. So if you go to their website, they are keeping information. We were given at our first meeting the incidents from the month of June. They have now updated that with the incidents from July, and they're almost as voluminous as the ones that we got in June. And you can suspect the ones in August. And keep in mind, as you know, most of these incidents concern the MCPS, and we're not even back in school yet. So just imagine how many things we're going to have in MCPS. Hopefully,
now I have my hand up. I have my hand
go ahead.
up.
I don't see your hand. Where you are?
It's on my picture. I am still struggling with a lot of this. I have not clearly identified the problem. I think we may assume we all see the same level of problem or the same problem. And as I stated when I introduced myself, I struggle more with how systems treat me than individuals. Because when you say this thing is racist, people learn how to not do that thing. So I hesitate to call acts racist. I like to look at what is really oppressing me, and it is not people burning a cross in my yard. I also struggle with the whole situation in schools. I see what they're saying. I'm struggling to say that an elementary school student is engaging in active hate. Active hate is just a whole different thing. So I'm struggling with that MCPS piece. I'm just going to be honest with you. They're counting widgets, but this thing called hate is so much bigger than a kid drawing something. And I'm struggling with what is the problem? What are we looking to solve here?
Yeah, I get all that, Tiffany. And, I mean, it's I'm just as emotional about it as you are. The last call on the 10th, it really triggered a lot. But I'm trying to stay true to the assignment. Not to say that you what you're saying is not relevant, but our assignment is primarily to deal with hate crimes, bias, and hate incidents as we know them, primarily to be reported by these stakeholders. And then those that we discover doing any investigation of the same. So I get that, and maybe down the road, one of our recommendations might be to amend the definition of hate crime as a legislative proposal is the only way that would get done. So
I almost feel like someone said we need to build a car to get to Europe. We don't need a car to get to Europe. We need a plane. I almost wonder if the assignment is accurate in what we really need. I'm just saying.
Well, here's the thing that you are, as a citizen of Montgomery County, you can do. Okay, so I failed to applaud Council President Evan Glass on this mission. Some would say under their breath that it's political in nature, but since that meeting, time and time again, there have been egregious acts, if not murder, committed against LGBTQ plus citizens. It's unnerving. Okay, none of us should stand for that kind of violence against anybody, any other group. Okay, and so I'm also encouraged that we're included in this process because ours have pretty much gone unrequited, unredressed for far too long. And like I said, it's triggering, but we do have to focus on the task before us, and that is to ferret out what the hate crimes are, the bias, the hate incidents, and fashion recommendations to assist the county in combating them. Now, I believe, you are required to do more than vote for electeds. After we vote for them, even if our candidate loses, we have to support in any way we can as citizens. And so it's a shared responsibility for us, not only to have the county electeds to lead, but us to give critique and comment on what is being done. And sometimes it's not good, but at the end of the day, we elected them and they are required to listen to us and vice versa. So I hear what you're saying, Tiffany. I think there's opportunity throughout this. Since we last talked, I reread your situation with your son in the school with the play money incident, and it was appalling how it was treated. And I share that kind of story with many of my colleagues who practice before the courts in Montgomery County, or they're dealing with the police department there. And there's too many to even, try to recount, but we need to address that. But if we can, do that, I think we'll have, time to focus on all the other things that kind of drive hate. And I kind of understand where you're going. The deep.
Thank you. I just want to know what we're attacking, and it's hard for me to see that. But I will be in observation mode for it.
Yeah. So these are the questions posted again, and so feel free if there are other organizations up there that you want to add, and we don't have to be belabored by scheduling listening sessions for all of them. We can actually do telephone interviews with some of them. Lisa is in our group, so we have the hate committee and Committee on Hate and Violence with us. So I guess the expectation would be if we ask Lisa nicely that she will provide some of the information that they've already been compiling. How long have you been in existence, Lisa?
That's a Jim Stowe question, but I would say over 20 years.
Oh, really? Okay, I thought that committee was about 5 or 6 years old. I'm not sure.
But I've been on the committee for 8 years, so I can tell you we are
okay. So there should be a mountain of information that you have, and maybe you would want to share to guide us towards our recommendations. And then we get into what are the second question: what are the primary policies, practices, and procedures? So again, in our fact-finding mission, I think it would behoove us to find out, well, what exactly are they doing? So we have a clear picture of whether or not what they're doing is meeting the need. So if there's some gap in what they're doing that's not curbing or curtailing, defacement or vandalism in the schools or hate speech or what have you, then we can make some assessment of that and say, hey, you need to do something else, or you need to add this to that, et cetera. But, you know, again, there's a process that we should apply, and that would be to prioritize those issues. So we do not necessarily get bogged down into every aspect of it, so that we can move towards delivering a report. But keep in mind, there might be an opportunity for us to go beyond the pale, what we're required to do. And I think we should, because, we're kind of being asked to address the problem that's been going on for over 400 years in our community. So I don't think we'll be able to address it overnight. But the second question, what are the primary policies, practices, and procedures employed? We just said that. So we're looking at hate crimes, bias, hate incidents, and other expressions. That might be where we talk about yours, Tiffany, the other expressions of hate. And then based upon this available information. So when I said available information, I'm pretty much talking about what has been provided us. And I just don't think they would have provided us all this information without us, giving us some critique about what was provided and using it as a basis of our investigation. So, again, what is working, what's not working? And then, and we're getting that from the perspective of the organizations, And I would be confident in saying that some of them are going to tell you what exactly is not working. And it could be personnel shortage. It could be lack of training. It could be a lot of things. I keep in mind too that, programs and policies and procedures are only as good as the people in charge to implement them and administer them. So sometimes it's a problem with the person or the people trying to implement the hate and bias procedures or programs to combat them. And then we need to get this from the perspective of the victims or potential victims. So, that will be our interrogation, if you will, of people who've actually experienced this and what their take on that should be done to further combat hate crimes. Hopefully that would lead us into some kind of information that will help heal, because as we can appreciate, most of these go unaddressed and it continues to fester and mount into something that is beyond repair sometimes. So we need to look at it from that standpoint. That is the victim of that. And hopefully also, and further talk about what else is in this question. The last one, what additional strategies and actions do these agencies or organizations believe will be helpful? Again, we're getting them to recommend what else they need. And, I think the other challenge is we spend a lot of money on crime and hate crimes. It's enormous. I read an article today about a deputy sheriff in San Francisco. And I don't know how real this is, but he clocked about $2.5 million in overtime money in 1 year. And I would imagine that's, related to his job, crime, et cetera. So we spend an awful lot of time and money on that. And, some of that money can be redirected to where it needs to be. But I will reiterate, those are the first 5 out of the 20. If they need to be reworked, amended, or whatever. But I just thought they would be a good guide to lead us into what we're actually interrogating here. What is it? What are we trying to find out? So we're not duplicating what's already being done. It also forges some sense of partnership and trust in the agencies that are already doing this. And finally, it gets us to some report that maybe down the line will be helpful to the county and to ourselves, we are really responsible for the same to reduce hate crimes and bias and hate incidents. So Tiffany, do you want to take the floor now on recapping August the 10th?
Sure. I have my notes and they are rough. They're not great. So I'm going to try to get through them as best I can. I'm sorry about the noise that's in the background. So we had our call to order, of course, and we voted on our chair and our and our co-chair, which would be yours truly, and also Ron. And we talked about, we actually spent time doing some discovery work, really getting to know each other and hearing perspective and why we believe this work is important. We felt that it was very important not to assume anything. And one thing we talked about was that individual acts of hate violence are very easy to address. We talked about some struggles that we even have within our own ethnicity, being people of African descent. And we felt that there was a disconnect. One of the things that came from our session was the fact that we feel like, well, I can't say we, but there's an economic benefit. It is an economic issue when it comes to hate and bias, oppression, and that if you follow the money, you may see the root of some of that impression. A lot of people came back with feelings of intimidation, almost a terrorism that has happened to the people in this country that are of African descent, that has not been adequately addressed. When we talk about systems of oppression, we felt like that's one thing that should be at the forefront. An example was the FBI has engaged in some of the worst bias, hate, etc. So that's where the systems came into play. So we started looking at things outside of the individual acts and how the totality of those incidents has affected Black people living in this country. There's just a huge cost. And between the people that were younger and older, and between the different genders, the experience was decidedly different. So it was a great talk, and we were able to get to the root of some of why this is important to us, whether we ourselves have witnessed it or been a victim of it. So that was pretty much it summed up. And I'm sorry I don't have more of my notes together, but that's the gist of it.
Oh, no, I think that's a great summary, Tiffany. I would just ask you or anyone else on the August 10th meeting, or what you just heard, would propose any action items around that.
Oh, I got to tell you, the one thing that came to me, Ron, was as we talk about hate, and even within our own ethnic background, relationship kept coming up. And I feel that when you're in relationship with people, you want to not hurt them. I almost think that policy is great, but relationship is going to drive the change that we need to see, because we've had policy coming out since 1865.
Yeah.
And I've learned that when people know me, when I say, hey, I don't like that, they listen to me because they don't want to hurt me, and they won't hurt others that look like me.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing the policy, but I'm still wondering, what are we really doing here? Because we got policy coming out of our ears.
Yeah, we do. And I think you are more or less talking more about recommendations, solutions. And
I maybe so, yes.
The getting to know you part is so important. I'll give you an example. I was going up the road. I don't remember where I was going, and I ran into a neighbor that I'd never met before, white gentleman, probably 5 or 6 years older. And, and being my crazy self, I just, start off in some, subject that got his attention, and we talked for about a half hour. And I found out so many things about him. But the first thing that struck me, he didn't seem to have a problem leaning into this dark-skinned man's car and holding a long conversation. And I told him about our task force as well. And another thing is he works at MCPS. He's a retired engineer, but he substitutes teaching. And he agreed. Yeah, we have these challenges, but pretty much what you said, Tiffany. We got to get together, and be in each other's neighborhoods and be in each other's business to some extent to quash this problem. And so he immediately volunteered. I didn't want to tell them, I said, you can't be on the black cohort, but some of the things that we might do will include you, like what you're suggesting. One of the things that I would recommend later is that we start walking our neighborhoods. We show a presence with people that don't look like us in our neighborhoods. And we'd be surprised about the information they will share. Some of them are also living in fear, you know, and are afraid to talk about it, especially, you know, if for example, if someone from our community, as we talked about earlier, commits a crime, let's say against an Asian person, then the Asian community and certainly that family is affected in a certain way. And it's not a good thing, you know. I mean, they tend to maybe buy into the stereotype that all of us are violent and would hurt them in some way. And so we got to get out of that thinking, and vice versa. You know, I don't walk around thinking that any group different from me is going to harm me until I see evidence of that. But I could really I could really live that life because of the 400 years of evidence that I live with. So, but that's a good point. I think when we talk, I mean, maybe archive the recommendations as we go forward. We've had night out, you know, with the police department. What is it? National Night Out. Supposed to draw in diverse communities around public safety led by police. That tends to be an activity that draws in several different groups. I know the Office of Human Rights typically has a Friends Picnic, I believe it's called. Director, jump in anytime you're ready. But that too is designed to pull, you know, a variety of communities together so we can get to know each other. And I think in a long way, it helps to reduce the amount of crime. I was reading a piece from the Manhattan Project. I mean, some people probably know more about the Manhattan Project than I do. That came out and I'll send that to the group, that came out in May, getting into the motivations behind a lot of hate crimes. But instead of agreeing with some of the psychological reasons behind it, they opine that the best way to deal with it is to strengthen our criminal justice laws, meaning be more stringent in the prosecution and sentencing of these crimes. I kind of disagree with that. I think, again, we've been sweeping it under the rug for too long that we have forgotten that these things come from root causes. And until you deal with the root causes, it's going to continue. I don't care how long you lock people up, how many more prosecutions you do. The problem will still persist unless you cut it off at the neck. So,
Bonnie, I hear you, but I don't agree with that.
Okay.
I think that in terms of fighting hate crimes, and you can see it because people who promote hate crimes have fought to lessen the laws, lessen the consequences of committing a hate crime.
Mm-hmm.
They've used that tool to promote hate crimes, and that they say, well, we'll change the laws so that if you do this, you won't get punished for it, or the hate crimes increase. And so I've got to believe that if there was greater enforcement of hate crime, there is a consequence for the action, then people will think twice about committing that action. I just believe that's how it works.
Yeah, so you would agree with the Manhattan Project.
Absolutely.
The jury is out in my mind on that because I have to.
So I have my hand up.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have my hand up. I'm going to say this. I do believe in consequences, right? As a learning tool. As a learning tool. I am going to say, and someone please tell me if I'm wrong, I don't know one crime that has decreased in this country due to prosecution of said crime. Not one. I haven't found one yet. If you found one, then maybe we can use that to substantiate that criminal prosecution will stop this, I don't know one crime that has decreased because of criminal prosecution of that crime. So now where does that put us?
Yeah.
Well,
there's something, there's another solution.
That doesn't look back at our history. That doesn't look back at our history, Chip. If you look back at our history, let's say lynching Black men and women, okay? If they're when people believe that they could lynch Black men and not be accountable for it, then you had when Justice Department started bringing those people to trial and those started getting convicted, the lynchings decreased. And so I can't see how you would make a statement that you haven't seen one versus were.
I stand corrected then on lynching. I would venture to say, however, that it was never quote unquote legal, it was socially acceptable. I think there's a difference.
Yeah, I would agree with both of you
yeah, it's like both of us are right in some regard. Yes.
However, in the sense that, you know, you could make the argument that lynching has been replaced with the wrongful death by police.
That's where I was heading. Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And so, you know,
so it changes methods and faces. It just does, and that doesn't get to the root of it. It's still happening.
And so the question is, has the actions by police been affected by the George Floyd, the consequences of people being held accountable and convicted with George Floyd and any of the other people that have been found guilty of crimes that, I mean, police that normally would have just walked away and not had any payment for what they're doing. But now,
I think it's too few and far between. It's too few and far between. Now it's not enough.
Now that they're being
let him finish.
Is that having an impact? And I believe that it is having an impact. I think that policemen are thinking twice before they're committing some of the things that they used to do, if they know they're going to be held accountable.
And I'm going to say that we have police officers that get terminated and other agencies say, we will welcome you because what they did to them was acceptable. And I can pull that up without even thinking about it, especially down in Florida, because I know those cases personally. I still think if it was enough, they would stop. And we still hear cases time and time again of crazy stuff officers are doing to Black people.
Yeah, it's abundant. And it you know, again, you can argue both sides. I think what we're tasked with doing is testing, you know, both. Is it?
Thing is, when I hear more prosecution, I'm like, okay, that's just more money going to criminal justice system. But okay,
it's true. But here we are. Let's take DC for example. This inordinate number of crimes being committed by teens who are seemingly, as the mayor himself would argue, not being detained long enough and should be held until a hearing so that it can be further detained and stopped from committing a crime. Someone informed me today that, you know, in a couple of cases in DC, teens that I think carjacked or did something heinous were released, and the very day they got out, they went back to doing the same thing. So I think there are arguments on both sides, but I think what we're tasked with here, and really to bring it home, no pun intended in Montgomery County, is to say, well, what is happening here? Are our laws, and remember, these laws are these are federal laws that we have subscribed to, defined by the federal government what a hate crime is, bias and others, you know, defined by federal law. So we have adopted that in this jurisdiction, and these are the laws that we prosecute. So the test would be, and then we have John McCarthy's office on this list, that is the state's attorney's office, to find out whether or not, either through him or maybe some examination of cases that they've prosecuted for hate crimes. I will tell you this, I had a conversation with a judge recently, and reaching out to say, is it possible that our group can talk to you, the bench, about hate crimes? And she went on to say, well, wouldn't be a long discussion because we have not had a lot of them prosecuted before us. So, you know, that says a lot. I mean, especially if we can verify from MCPD rather, that there were some crimes, hate crimes committed. So then our next examination is, well, why were they not papered? You know, why, you know, in other words, prosecuted by the state's attorney's office. And
but can't we look at it like this? At least I do. By the time it's gotten to the, I don't want to say criminal justice system, but by the time it's gotten to that system, we have failed. We're done. It's a wrap. The harm, it has been done. I'm trying to prevent the harm. The harm is done when we get there. It is a failure to prosecute. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be a consequence, but we have failed in preventing harm if it's before anybody's judge.
Well, I wouldn't disagree, but it does then put the focus back on us, the community. You know, when we asked the question of the MCPS leadership, well, what is your expectation from this task force? One of the things they said was to partner with them. But then he also said that, in other words, we need to be doing the job in the community to stop it from entering the schools. So
I'm gonna add a group here, Racial Justice Now. We have a meeting with MCPS every single month.
Okay.
Every month. And we specifically bring forward racial justice for Black students specifically.
Okay.
And I'm going to say, my son attended one of the elite schools in the county, actually a couple. And I'm trying to figure out how your school has no Black teachers and is decidedly a very white, anti-Black environment. And you want to say that you want to work on it with your students, you have to start at the top. And I've had MCPS staff say that to me. We don't have Black teachers here because they're not comfortable here. So how are your students gonna be comfortable here?
That was a response.
There's a high level of analysis. Oh yeah. When I tell you I'm in these streets for real, I'm not just talking about what I'm guessing about. If your school is anti-Black and you don't have Black teachers, how are you going to be the right fit for your Black students? How are you going to treat them well when you can't even get staff to come in and get paid well? And I had a staff member tell me that.
You raise another issue that is what the state is working on. That is the blueprint for education and for Montgomery County, and actually for the state, for all counties. And our former county executive chairs the accountability piece of that. And one of the things they're looking at is just what you're talking about, the disproportionate number or lack of representation thereof of teacher pupil ratio, Black to Black student. We encounter the same thing with our children in MCPS. Most of the schools, even in our Black predominantly neighborhood, I mean, I'm in District 5, we're about 30% Black, but at the time it was over 60% of the teachers and administrators were white. So we kind of scratched our heads on that too. And so it certainly would persist in other areas that do not have the same numbers of African Americans, Black folk. But it needs to be challenged, and I think it will be by the blueprint that they're working on. And you should look that up, Tiffany, and send them a comment or whatever, and make sure that your group is being heard on that issue.
In that state of Maryland?
Yeah. Well, the
Okay.
yeah, it'll come right up. Just type in blueprint for Maryland, and it'll come right up. And they've been working on this almost about 3 years now, I think. And should come to some culmination soon on it. So, but it definitely a significant issue. And the other issue we don't talk about is the element of fear, that is triggered by that. Not only by the perpetrators, but the victims that are controlled by fear in those atmospheres. But again, going back to Reverend Boney's point, I think we test both out to see whether or not we need to recommend some either more strict application of the hate crime laws in bias and hate incidents in this county, or maybe recommend an amendment to those laws. Quite frankly, there was a very significant one made to the law as a result, and you'll see that in your packet, of the death of Lieutenant Collins, the young man who had just graduated from Bowie State and was stabbed through the heart by a white nationalist at University of Maryland for no reason, just random. And they prosecuted him on hate crimes, but the judge dismissed the hate crime count because the law did not fit the fact pattern at that time. It did not take into account, the physical harm or some other things aside from his identity. Even though when they did the investigation of the perpetrator, they found, I believe it was over 17,000 hate messages in his computer, and several other, maybe 5,000 or so. I mean, that's a big number, affiliations with hate groups. And so it wouldn't have been hard to reach the conclusion that what he did to this Black man was based on, hate, for Black people. So, but that is an example where we will need to look at the law. And I think that's why, I think we should certainly examine the criminal justice system in Montgomery County, what they're doing at the police level, what they're doing at the state's attorney's level, and exactly also examining even the few cases that the judges have handled. What is their opinion about what should be done to combat hate in these situations? So, any other comments or suggestions on questions, or any other questions so far?
Ron, this is Reverend Boney. I agree with your strategy of let's not recreate the wheel. Of let's get some of the groups that are already doing work, looking at hate crimes incidents in the county, and let's listen to them. And why don't we start with Lisa, since we have access to her? She's here.
There you go, Lisa.
When she can schedule something. I mean, you wouldn't expect her to do something right off the spot, but maybe at our next meeting or next time we get together, that she would prepare something and kind of give us a summary of what she sees.
Yeah. Thanks, Reverend Boney. You're taking us into our next agenda item. Exactly that. I mean, scheduling, events or meetings or what have you with some of the prioritized stakeholders to find out exactly what you're talking about.
I think we need to get that going.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you say, Lisa? What do you think? One would be a.
No, so we do this as a matter of course for the work we do for the Montgomery County Committee Against Hate Violence, and so we've had listening sessions for various parts of the community, and we typically schedule them by topic area. So in the last year, we've had one for hate bias incidences and MCPS. We've also had one on anti-Semitism. I've done one on gender identity discrimination. So we do have them. It just depends. I mean, happy to do another one. Right now, I know our folks are working on one that will be between now and November. Richard Allen is one of our leaders in our committee. And so each of the ones we do, we typically have experts come in and then we have folks add value to it. So we haven't really had what I consider to be a quote unquote listening session in the last 6 years. We did have one with the Muslim Community Center. And so, which did include people of color of the African American community. But, you know, what I think would be better is if we as a cohort created a listening session that specifically addresses the issues of African Americans that has not been done to date with my committee. I see Tiffany has her hand up, so I will, and we're happy to facilitate, so I can facilitate, but you know, I think this particular instance with this committee is directed to issues related to African Americans and people of who are Black, and so I don't know that we've done that. But I'm going to stop talking and hear what Tiffany has to say. But if we want to do that, we can do that. We would just have to have Richard redirect his attention to this because he's the person who really facilitates this information. And of course, Director Stowe can correct me if he has other ideas.
I was just thinking, and by now you all know that my mind goes a mile a minute, thinking back to what Reverend Boney said. I would venture to say probably one of the best times in this country for people of African descent was Reconstruction. And I started to think to myself, why? There was almost a watchdog that was sent down from the nation's capital to say, we are going to do what it takes to integrate former enslaved people into society. And they were doing well. They were not being subject to the violence until the people convinced them that they could handle it themselves. And when the feds went away is when Jim Crow started. And I just started thinking, what is that watchdog that we need? Because we don't have it. There is something that's missing, and I don't quite know what it is. But there is something that has to be there to hold society accountable in some way. And back then it was the federal government. Now I don't know what that could look like, but I just began to think about that was the one time we could say people that were formerly enslaved did well, but it was only because there was someone there to really enforce that law, policy, procedure.
Yeah, they had troops.
I mean, literally, there was a watchdog looking, saying, if you do it, we sit here looking at it. It's almost like people feel like they're not eyes on them that's going to hold them accountable. Like, what is that thing or that entity that really holds society as a whole accountable? And I'm not sure what that is, but I just began to think about that.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. Director Stowe, you wanted to comment?
Well, actually, you took the words out of my mouth. That indeed, that what at least one of the interest that let me start it again. One of the entities that was involved in that process that Tiffany speaks to was, in fact, federal troops, and part of the Rutherford B. Hayes' election as president. That was a deal that they struck to pull them out of the South. And that's how that kind of happened. So there was not anything that was not planned and intentional and already assured of the outcome.
Right.
And then I always use that as a great example that this period of history, because it was all done in plain sight. There's nobody hiding things that were happening. But let me switch gears a little bit and just say this, that back to some earlier comments, and I've been just listening here for a while, but the one thing that we have in place today is, and sometimes it's not doesn't always work for us, but it is in fact these laws and legislation that were spoken to earlier in this conversation. We don't get Topeka, Kansas Board of Education piece, right, unless we have the law. And we were then to move to a place where we were different than it was prior to. And of course, that was not just the one case involving Kansas. It was a series of cases that were a part of that whole class action. So the point I'm making by simply saying that is that we've got to have then people who are on the front lines who are really fighting and advocating. I think that Ben Hogan has done a lot for this country in terms of moving some of the agenda, because part of his practice has more to do with as much to do with not only representing his clients, but also it's called movement lawyering now. Those who are lawyers who are actually trying to move the movement of change and social justice as part of their particular practice. So that is going on. So there is at least that entity that's out there that's trying to make a difference. I think, however, one of the real problems that we have sometimes, at least for the work that I do, that's all I can speak to, is that oftentimes we have difficulty with people, and let's just take just a simple discrimination case as an example, sometimes just simply following through to make this sure, because it is a time-consuming piece at best, even with what I just said a minute ago.
And it's exhausting. It's exhausting. Yes.
No question about that. No question about that. And part of the strategy then, folks, is that person will give up and throw up their hands and then move on. And that is, again, an intentional piece as well. So it is about this idea of, again, in my opinion, how do we get to a point where we, in fact, have opportunities to really, push the system, take it to task, have the right case, by the way, or have the right example, have the right situation or circumstance that allows us to make the principal point that people have to listen to, at least give an ear to. Whether or not the action is taken, maybe a different matter. But I'm saying at least we bring to the attention of this community, and we're talking about Montgomery County, about an injustice that it must deal with. As you all know, once you see something, once you hear something, you cannot unsee it and you cannot unhear it. Right. It has an impact. And so I think that what we're looking for here is not changing people's thought processes. I just want to modify their behavior. I want them to do something different. I want them to think differently about these issues. And if I get them to think about it, maybe they may in fact modify that behavior. So I think that one of the things that we are doing with the Committee Against Hate Violence is, first of all, trying to educate folks, as our chair has said, about some of these issues, because some of them, if they're not in your face, if they're not part of your community, not part of your network, not part of your environment, you may not know about these things. And so part of our job is, in that particular instance, is to educate folks about a number of issues through a number of different filters. And the last thing I'll say is this, is that we've got, and maybe we're not there yet, Mr. Chairman and Madam Co-Chair, maybe we're not there yet in terms of announcements about events coming up, but there are some things coming up that I did want to share at the appropriate time.
Oh, absolutely. We'll get to those. And for those of you who don't know,
yes, please.
That's Director James Stowe, who's
director
of the county's Office of Human Rights in Montgomery County. So Christine and Ilhan, that's Director Stowe, who is a part of our cohort. And, I'm still scratching my head how I'm chair when he's the most knowledgeable person on this call.
Exactly.
So is Lisa, but they let me wing it. So thank you.
No, I think they kind of forced us into it, actually.
Yeah, well, they have so much on their plates. They're carrying planners. We have small plates by comparison. But
I'm just grateful to be in the space.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we're in good hands. I think when we get down to business and put this stuff together, it's going to be something that's going to change how we're being treated in our cohort,
and to change our future, because I am concerned about our youth. So definitely.
No question.
So, but I mean, thank you for those comments, Director Stowe. And so we are looking at 817. Did anybody want to chime in on that comment? And there are other events that we want to think about. Certainly, I think what Lisa has offered is certainly something we should pursue soon, and well before November, because we're on deck October the 26th for our presentation, albeit just 30 minutes. I would like us to set a hard deadline for a draft, maybe by September the 26th, that we have a draft of where we're going.
Okay.
And then we can put the finishing touches on it before the 26th and have a deliverable also, I suppose, in conjunction with the other cohorts on the 28th. If anyone has connections to these groups, I mean, maybe Tiffany, you want to contact your group that's inside the schools and have a Zoom with them, you know.
Okay.
But I would caution us that we, you know, for when we're dealing with MCPS, I think we definitely have to involve the students in some way. And we need to hear directly from them.
So I will say this, I have a nonprofit that can offer SSL hours. We can get them to participate and offer SSL. So that's a way to get them involved as well.
That's incentive. That's incentive. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Well, let's pursue that. And then Lisa, as she is always able to do, is get some stuff scheduled at the end of this meeting with our action items. I will also offer, I'm going to approach our Girls and Rites of Passage programs in our church. We mentor both boys and girls beginning in September, October through May. And so typically there's a good gaggle of both, maybe about 20 to 30 some odd boys, and the same number with the young ladies as well. And so, and there are probably 90% of them are NCPS students as well. So that could be something that we could do. And if we did it online, you know, Zoom, we just send an announcement out and we can get as many students as we possibly can on that. Maybe do some pre-screening by offering, you know, some kind of survey or questions or whatever. So we won't be there for 4 hours, but you know, I think we all understand that we are probably not going to be able to get to every student, every 160,000 of them. But we're looking to prioritize even where we get the information from. So some of the stuff that we got from MCPS clearly, you know, kind of enumerates the schools, points out the schools where this is happening. And we might also inquire with the superintendent's office and the school board. So also as to kind of sharpen our focus of where we're going to go and probably get the best information. The thing with the NAACP, they have an education committee as well. In fact, I do know the chair of that committee, Byron John, so he's on my list. The other,
hey, Ron, I'm also on that committee, and we're having our meeting, first meeting for the school year on Wednesday, where I'll be presenting. And so I recommend that we use them, and I can mention it to him or mention to our leaders in that committee meeting as well. The other place we want to think about for MCPS is they do have the Minority Scholars Program, and that couples all the minority scholars throughout the county, and they seem to have their eye on the prize, and they have a pulse about they have their hand on the pulse about what's going on.
Yeah, that's great. You know, for me, Lisa, I would hope that we would figure out how we get a cross representation, not just students down county, but mid county, east, west, whatever, so as you know to kind of get the best. You know, my recall of some of these in MCPS that a lot of them were happening in schools like Richard Montgomery and Chevy Chase, some of the more predominantly white schools with respect to our students, you know.
So Byron has done a good job. He works with the Black and Brown Coalition, and so he has ample representation throughout the county.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Down and up and east.
That would be great. That would be most helpful. Thank you, Lisa. And so, you know, I think that would get us, you know, take us a long ways on, you know, where we're going. We have the Faith Advisory Group. So, you know, certainly let's not forget a lot of these incidents that are occurring at, you know, in and around churches, defacement and all. So Reverend Boney could probably speak to that and gather us within the Black Ministers Conference. We're also in communication with the current president. Reverend Boney is the immediate past president. But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Reverend Boney, that you guys, Black Ministers Conference represents over like 22 different churches in the area.
Yeah, about 30.
About 30 now. Wonderful. Yep. So we should be able to get a lot of them in the room and get to the nub of this, and maybe also include the Faith Advisory Group as well. You know, I'm just thinking they have some data on these incidents as well with respect to Black churches. You know, we don't forget the county council. You know, they started this, what we're on, so they obviously have some res gesta of information that leads them to this. And then I think, as Lisa pointed out, we gotta, you know, pull in county agencies. And I put that as broad a category, Lisa, because I did not know all the agencies that do have some hand at combating hate. So I don't know what those other agencies might be, but certainly other community-based organizations like Tiffany mentioned might have something important to share with us. So let's see if we can get to the other item. I did want to, and from our last conversation, just talk a little bit about the examples of the reports. Again, I mean, my thing is, you know, we need to be working backwards so we can have a deliverable. And working backwards to me means, hey, well, what is this going to look like? And what should we be thinking about putting in our report? So we got two pretty good samples from the council vis-a-vis Selena. One is an Illinois report on hate, and then another is from the great state of Washington on hate. Did anyone get a chance to review those? Okay, if not, I kind of glanced them, went through them a little bit, and I tell you the two main things that I, you know, off the top noticed, that these are not necessarily reports on observations and recommendations being made in as diverse communities that we serve in. So that's one of the big things. And I don't know if the data is certainly going to match up, but I think the general categories will. The other thing is that neither seem to include more than a few community members, and they seem to be all government officials or, you know, some related kind of government officials, and not necessarily folk from the community like myself and Tiffany and some of the others who are not connected to government. And then lastly, they did similarly what the council is asking us to do, and that is to reduce our recommendations to about 5. I think the Washington report, I could be wrong, has about 7 recommendations. The Illinois has about 5. And the Illinois' report is really not all that lengthy. They kind of talk about the history of it and some of the things that have been done interimly and some of the things that they've concluded they need to beef up going forward. The Washington report is a little more lengthy. It's about 20 plus pages, and it's a little more in depth, but at the same time, I think that certainly content will not necessarily move us because neither seems to calculate based on as a diverse of a community that we serve in. So, but I think, you know, since they recommended them, that it might behoove us to follow at least the structure and the some of the content of what they put in there. But again, I would recommend make sure that we include, you know, the data that we already have and then the data based on our investigation and observations going forward. And should it be different from what they've reported, then so be it. But, you know, I think we wouldn't do justice if we just simply used it as a, you know, copious template and not reflect our own work on this. So, but
Chairman,
at least we have.
I just wanted to ask, we have 3 minutes left, if the guests had anything to add to our conversation.
Well, I just wanted to put in these events and have director to add his, and then we can do that, if you don't mind, Lisa. So sure, again, we start. No, I mean, you know, it's democratic, but I just wanted to remind everybody the March on Washington is this Saturday. Also, Montgomery County is, and I'm giving these things because these are things I think we can agree on that are in some way counter hate. Okay.
Yeah.
Montgomery County Interfaith 5K walk and run. That's on Monday, September the 4th from 8 a.m. and I'll send the links to these later. And then I mentioned earlier the State Attorney General's office. They have a parallel commission. They started before we did, but they have a commission on hate crimes response and prevention meeting. Their first meeting coming up on Wednesday, September the 6th, from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. And I think it's important that we look at that so we do not duplicate what they're doing, but we can also learn from them. And then there's an opportunity for us to learn, for them to learn from us, as one of the Jewish cohorts that we're serving with in the county's task force also serves on the Attorney General's commission. And so 2 other items, they're making their presentation, that is the Jewish cohort on the 29th. Is that Monday? What day is the 29th? I don't know what day that is, but it's on the 29th, I think, at 7 p.m. It's in your package.
On and Tuesday.
Is that a Tuesday? Thank you, Director. And then lastly, you know, one of the things that I don't know if the county does this, maybe you know, Director, do we observe National Peace Day? Do we do anything with that?
We have not, that I am aware of. I think it's a great opportunity to do something, but I'm not aware that we do anything, to be honest with you.
Yeah, because that's coming up on September the 21st as well. I just thought that would, you know, we've done so much. I mean, it kind of goes back to what Tiffany says, and we do all the stuff, but it continues. But at least it's something. I mean, and sometimes it abates and sometimes it doesn't. But I think we should definitely talk about how we coordinate to maybe be a part of Peace Day, or even start our own Peace Day in the county.
And if you could please share that.
Yeah, I'll share those links.
Thank you, because I'll forget. Yeah.
Director, go ahead. You want to add on events?
Yes, I'll be real quick. On September the 19th, this is in addition to the work that the Attorney General is doing. We are partnering with Howard County and Prince George's County in an effort to look at issues of hate incidences that have occurred in our 3 counties. We're involving police, we're involving the Attorney Generals, I should say the state's attorneys of each county, and also the school system. And there is a forum day on the 19th of September from 8:30 until 5. It'll be at the Germantown campus of Montgomery College. And I have a flyer that I'll get out to everybody on tomorrow with all the specifics about that particular event. But it'll be a chance to also hear the most recent report of hate in the state of Maryland, broken down into our individual counties for this session. And so that will be the thrust of the meeting, and then the opportunity then to actually hear from folks who may have encountered certain kinds of issues in the 3 counties that they want to share in the public forum itself. So again, September 19th, Germantown campus of Montgomery College. And then the other thing, just keep this date open. I need to talk to my chair about this first, but we're close to at least make an announcement on the 24th of September about an event, and we'll give you more detail about that. But just right now, just get that event date on your calendar, 24th of September. But it's a Sunday afternoon. So we'll get back with you on that piece.
Any idea, Director, what the focus is on that one? Or
the focus would be again about us coming together as a community. So that is the big focus there.
Okay, all right.
Great. Okay, and the 19th, just so you know, folks, is we have a task force meeting that night. Just as
no conflict. That's at 7, right?
Yeah.
Well,
on a Sunday? Okay.
Yeah.
On a Sunday, Lisa?
No, the Sunday 24th is fine. It's the 19th, the Germantown.
The 19th, okay.
Yeah.
But now Ron's saying we don't have a conflict. We can do all hate violence and discrimination between 5 until 9.
All day.
All day.
It's gonna be triggering, but we can do it. We'll get through it, y'all. Oh, wow. Anything else for the good, buddy?
No, I need to go attend to my child now. He went to orientation today.
Hey, Lisa, Tiffany, you can't go. We got guests.
I have a high school. Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Please, I'm so sorry. Ilhan, please forgive me.
Oh, no problem. First, I wanted to say hi.
We have Ms. Kagri. Okay,
yes.
Go ahead.
I just want to say hi to Tiffany and to thank everybody for a really enlightening conversation. I did have one comment real quickly, if you'll just permit me. And perhaps Reverend Stowe will know the details of this. Years ago, when I was working in advocacy in Washington, D.C., and I was dealing with the Justice Department, they did not count hate crimes in terms of statistics, unless local police districts, actually prosecuted hate crimes. So when they're collecting data for hate crimes, if it's not prosecuted, then they say, for example, there's no hate crimes in Alabama or Arkansas because they're not prosecuting. And there was
sounds like a watchdog is needed.
Well, exactly. So Tiffany, back to what you were saying in terms of, the government coming in, the government cannot come in if the government says, well, there's no evidence of a hate crime. And the only way you can have evidence of a hate crime is if you actually prosecute. And my point at the time was saying, look, the police were saying, well, no, we got him for murder, so that should be good enough. Why do we have to also prosecute him for a hate crime? Well, the reason is because then it doesn't go in the records as a hate crime. So that, and I don't know if things have changed, maybe Reverend Stone knows if it has, but that's another reason that you need to have prosecutions for hate crimes, aside from the accountability purpose for record keeping.
Or it should be counted differently by the federal government. The federal government maybe needs to say, we don't need you to identify it. If it's this, and this, that's what it is.
Yeah, they can't. That's going to be harder to do because the government works on changing that kind of policies in the federal government.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Well,
I used to work at DOJ, and we can have a conversation about reaching out to the Assistant Attorney General about how they should change. I'm not sure that's currently the practice, so I will defer to Director Stowe, but that's a very easy fix. We can fix that.
Well, Lisa, if you could maybe check that with the DOJ and just get back to, all of us would be interested. Some of all the information that people are accumulating, I was making a suggestion that it is on one website, but we should have a resource page where, we could go on and find all these resources, but that should be something that I think everybody would be interested in knowing.
I agree. I'll reach out to DOJ and let you guys know.
But still, let's not forget that we have a local cohort as well, the State's Attorney's Office here, and see, if there's an issue, preventing the prosecution of hate crimes. There are many reasons why sometimes they do not prosecute. The law may not fit on all fours of the evidence.
And I think that's what needs to be looked at, because murder is not always murder. Murder can be manslaughter, it can be premeditated, it could be capital, it could be so something about that criteria may need to be looked at, and I think you've mentioned that before.
Well, a lot of times they say, hey, I got you for this, why do I need to prosecute you for
exactly that? So then there's a knowledge check. You need to do it because we need to track it.
Right.
But I think what she's saying too, at the very least, at threshold, if they're being charged with that, even though it's later dropped, there should be some database for even collecting information on the charge itself.
Well, Reverend, if it's dropped, it still goes in the records. That was my point then. That charge it, if you find that you can't prosecute, you don't have enough evidence or whatever, you can drop it later, but it would still have gone into the records as having been.
Right, I agree. That's what I'm saying. That's what we should capture that.
And I was going to say that one thing we can do to the comment and the observation is two things. One is there is the Community Relations Services of the Department of Justice, and we have someone who's assigned to our area. That district is out of Philadelphia. And I would recommend strongly that we invite that person. I just met him. The name escapes me right now, but I just met the person.
Oh, that's
recently.
great. Okay.
They can come and share with us. But I believe that there was an act that came out of the whole James Byrd incident down in Texas that I'm pretty sure addressed the issue that's being raised. But point is this: is that we can always Google that and kind of see if I'm on point with that. But in the meantime, everybody remember Mr. Byrd out of Texas?
Yep.
That's the one that was dragged to death?
Yep.
That's exactly correct.
Yeah.
Exactly correct.
Yeah.
And just because he was black, 18-year-old guy with a truck and so forth and so on. So it's certainly worth a quick review if you don't remember that one. But the point is that out of that came, though, I believe, and then the Matthew, help me with this one, out in out west, he was a gay man.
Shepherd.
Say it again, Matthew Shepard. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
He was, he identified with the LGBTQI plus community and was assaulted and killed.
And there was that's also a piece of legislation that came out of that as well. So I think that there is some new, if it wasn't then that you're recalling, there's new underpinning that is available now that again calls for at least the recording of and monitoring of those kinds of acts of hate and intimidation. But who can make sure that we're on point is, again, our representative from the Community Relations Services for the Department of Justice. And they're literally a phone call away. They're that responsive.
Yeah. I mean, not to belabor, but it's important. I would add too, Director et al., that we start looking at these affiliations to hate groups, if that surfaces. I even want us to maybe think about having an index of, hate symbols, tattoos, markings, or whatever.
The Southern Poverty Law Center does that really well. They have a listing of all the hate groups.
They sure do. Yeah. They've got that.
So we need to, but I don't know how it translates down to our county, though. That's what I'm saying. Some information.
It does. They do a very good job. They do a very good job.
Yeah. And our police department also locally it has that kind of intelligence as well. So we've got resources here. We just got to figure out how you want to assemble them and what you want to come before you, because we do have those resources. And remember where we're located, folks. We're just a stone's throw from the nation's capital. We got resources now. That's not our issue. That's not our issue. So we just need to ask for them. Yep. And one more person too that we got to get involved in this is also the U.S. Attorney, Eric Barrett. Is also someone we need to pull into this as well. And he also is a phone call away.
Yeah.
My father actually taught on this in the military. It's huge in the military. This is one thing that he taught on. Yeah.
Okay, so we Christine, thanks for hanging in there with us.
No worries.
Didn't mean to slight you by holding you to the end, but did you have anything to add or comment or question?
Yeah, I'm going to try and be as brief as I can, but I come from many perspectives. I'm an immigrant, and I raised my son in this county, and I invested a lot of time trying to be in his, I guess maybe block all the hate that came towards him being a Black young boy, and the investment that I put into it, I'd be a multimillionaire if I was paid. And it's tedious and it's time consuming. It's draining. And so I had to stay in the public schools. I invested 10 years straight from kindergarten all the way to high school. That's how far he would let me go until he became so embarrassed. But I did projects in the community. I worked with Wheaton Regional Library. I worked with private schools, public schools. I was in his school, and the hate towards him started in kindergarten. In his kindergarten years.
Yes.
Moving, and I had to always couldn't sleep, exhausting. So now it's my turn now. He's done. He graduated college. He's doing well and all of that. But now that trauma that I've carried, it's compounded with the trauma that I experienced.
Right.
And so I come from, I say immigrant perspective because I also get, hate from Black Americans.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's unfortunate. And I had a horrific incident, one that it froze me for a long, long time. So not to keep talking because we've been here for a long, long time, but my reason for coming was, I wrote it down, lack of access and protection from the various institutions tasked to oversee community safety. I feel that The hate against Black-skinned people is not seen as anti-Semitic hate and anti-Asian hate. I think it's so regular because of the country's history that they go unnoticed or they're brushed aside or talked about lightly, something sort of like, just like brushing your teeth kind of way. I think some people see that not as normal, but it's just another day.
Right.
I've had bad experiences with the state's attorney's office, Office of Human Rights, HHS, Office for Civil Rights, Commissioner's Office, police. They turn a blind eye to Black, and then especially Black women. Okay. Many times my son would have to come from the West Coast to here just to try to assure me that you're not alone. My sister moved to Georgia 2 years ago because of the prolific hate and discrimination that Black women experience and our children. And so I'm looking at the system and I'm looking at the structures, and I see a lot of people from some of the places that I mentioned. And I'm not saying it's anyone's fault or anything, but I think it's the way the system is structured, wherein not much can be done, not unless you have a video recording or it's you're cut or you're hurt or you're bloodied. I think a lot of times when we bring our stories, the system errs on the side of the other and not with us. And so I just want to feel protected. I did my protecting with my son, that was I decided to have him, so I protected him. But now that I'm here, a single person by myself, it's really difficult when things occur to not feel that you're protected or shielded or you can turn, because it's like a tremendous insult when you're harmed and then you reach out to these institutions for assistance and they turn you away.
Let me ask you this, Christine, real quick. I mean, have you ever been the victim of a hate crime?
Yes.
Okay. Could you share what that was and whether or not?
Yeah. So I've had some back surgeries. So I stopped driving. So I used public transportation. And I was on the ride-on bus. The bus came to my stop and there was something going on. And I got on the bus driver told me to come on. He was also an immigrant. He couldn't speak that well. And so he asked me to come on to use my phone. And I was like, oh, I didn't have too much, bar on it. So I was like, and also I didn't want to get involved. Long story short, the man who he was going back and forth with turned to me. And I don't know if he knew me from wherever, but he just started his vitriol. He told me I can't repeat what he said, but he did tell me in all of that, he said, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to come back here and hurt you. You're African. You stink. Get out of this country. You're taking things from us. He was going off. He was letting everything that was on his heart. He threw all of that on me. And then he stood up and he attempted to punch me. And he told me what he was going to do. And he told me he was going to come back. And I reported it and nothing. I even got a written attestment from the bus driver. He attacked the bus driver also. He attacked both of us. And he was specific to me. And I kept trying to look through his mask. I was like, do I know him? How does he know I'm an African? And he was just going and going and going and going.
Was this a white? What was it?
No.
Was a black guy that did this?
Black American, yeah. A Black American fellow, which was very unfortunate. That coming from people who share my skin is always, hard to swallow. But it's hard to swallow in general, but I'm just saying that
And who did you report it to, Christine?
I reported it to Right On, yeah, and they pretended like, you know, it, whatever. And then I reported it. I called the police, and they said that Right On didn't tell them, didn't write a report. And then I called the police. No, I called the police, and they said they didn't write a report about it. They just got him off the bus, and that was that. I called the state's attorney's office to get the fella's name so that I could get at least get like a protective order or something or whatever, just for him to know that someone's eyeing you. You can't come back and do this to this person. The state's attorney said she knew nothing. She didn't know the person's name. I went to who else? Victim assistance. She told me, oh, don't worry about it.
But Christine, not to interrupt you, this is my focus, are the systems that continue to perpetuate harm. And that is what I'm always going to stand on, because they tend to do more harm because they have the greatest reach and they will not do anything about it.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I said lack of access and protection, because people are going to do what they're going to do. And we're I know we want to reach people's hearts and minds, but in the meantime, we're still living. And so we need the system to be our cover at times. And this is not the only time it's happened. It happened to me back to back in the healthcare, in form of the healthcare. And I have a case with the Home Human Rights. They're looking at it, but I know what the result will be because they brush things aside. I have a case of HHS Civil Rights. They came in and told me because I couldn't provide a video, so they'll just educate the what do you call it, medical facility. And so when we tell our stories, I don't know what we need to do. I would not fight back. I would not, hit back. I'm not gonna respond in kind. Then what do? You just,
Christine, I will be the first to say this, and I'm always very open and frank when I facilitate classes. I have bias. I have to fight through my bias every day. And when I see loud people that look like me, I automatically go, now, why do they have to act like that out here? And I have to check myself. I do. And I think that we have to admit that bias is present in all of us. We do need to remember that this is not just anti-hate, but anti-bias. Bias is huge. Bias will make you think that the white person is the supervisor, when in fact it could be someone Black. It will make you think that you have to approach someone with a different color of skin differently. So I think we need to remember that and check ourselves.
Yeah. Well, for me, what bothers me is when someone's physical, their words you can talk to me and say anything to me at any time. I don't fret about it. But when you become physical, because my experience in the doctor's office was just horrifying. He called my pain bullshit, told me I was lying, and then he said, "You people," and then when you get up to attack me, to come at me because he thought I was recording him, he grabbed my hands. That's where because I'm not supposed to, we're not tasked to like each other. We're just supposed to, in a professional setting, respect people and respect institutions and all of that. But we don't have to like each other. And so you can not like me, but just I don't want special treatment. And people always think special treatment is good. Special treatment can be bad. Because if you treat me special, it means you're not giving me the same thing you would give everybody else. So I always try to tell people when I talk about these things, it's not about special treatment. I just want equal, same treatment. And so
I'm sorry about your experiences. That is absolutely horrible. I'm sorry,
Christine. But why don't if you're not satisfied that whomever you reported these to is not doing what they should be doing. I would encourage you to refile or what have you. If you want to share your contact information with any one of us, please put it in the chat. But this is part of what we're challenged with too, and that is the gargantuan amount of misinformation that we all operate off of, and stereotypes, et cetera. Certainly, I think what your situation with the gentleman on the bus would fit as a hate crime.
Horrible. It's horrible.
Because it was an attack against your national origin, I believe. Said that.
Yes. Yes.
I need to share this. I can't address the issue with that's before us. That would be unethical to do that. But I can address the issue relative to hate crime. We've got to be real clear about this. Hate crime is the second part of the commission of a crime.
Of the crime.
So you got to be real clear about that. That's not to say that what happened was not a hate incident.
Yeah,
but that's not a hate crime.
Okay. No, but that was a crime because he battered.
Well, assault doesn't necessarily have to be physical.
Right.
Words of intimidation. So the assault in and of itself is a crime.
But again,
it's exhausting.
Definition wise, we gotta be real careful that we convey that to folks that there is a difference and there is a threshold that's got to be met before the word designation hate crime can be put on. That means it didn't happen that way. That's not what I'm saying at all. And that's the part that sometimes really frustrates many of us is that we know what we know has happened to us. And whether or not it fits someone's process or their procedure or definition, it's a whole different matter. But what we know is that this happened to me. I know because I was there. And sometimes we get really emotionally attached to that. And the unfortunate thing is that if it does not necessarily meet a process, in this case, or a definition, if you're pursuing it that way, you can't go any further with that. You can't go any further.
Yeah. I don't think the healthcare incident was necessarily a hate crime, but the bus incident definitely was. But I will say though that discrimination graduates to bigotry and to hate crime. And so I know our topic, the topic here now is hate crime, but it's sort of like like if you study anything where policing, I took some classes in policing, how when you do a small, you have to catch the small because when it gets to the big, it's far too far down. So that's what I'm saying. But it's just too bad. And when my sister said she had to go and she moved to Atlanta, she said, I can't do this here anymore. And so she says because it's too prolific. And I remember with my son, I just every day. So, you're blocking it, all of that. So. But I'm just I want wrapping it up. These institutions that are tasked to protect have to protect. You have to enforce, and you have to treat it better. And don't just think that because it's not anti-Semitism or anti-Asian or anti-whatever. The ones that are more, I guess I don't want to be, I don't know, but I think you understand what I'm saying. It's just that we've had this for forever and all. And so I think sometimes when people look at hate towards Black people, it's looked at differently. Because it's the norm, it's the foundation of this country.
Let's see if we can go, but I wanted to acknowledge again Karen Bretto. Karen, did you have anything to add or before we leave?
No, I don't have anything to add.
Okay, thanks for joining us. And then our other cohort member, Jackie Denard, did join us late from her meeting. Jackie, did you have anything to add before we close out?
No, I just have a question to, I apologize for being late. Christine, you said your sister moved to Georgia. How are things there?
I think she looks younger than I am, and I'm younger than she is. Because she loves it there.
Wow.
Yeah, she does. And she's there and she's just like, the people are different. Not to say it's perfect or anything, but I think she said even the way Blacks treat each other is different. And so, but she just said, that daily fear is cut considerably. And her experiences with people and institutions and doctors and yeah.
What part of Georgia is she? Do you know? What part of Georgia?
She's in Atlanta.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
That's all right. I'm from Georgia. That's why I was asking.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. She told me to come.
Okay.
Well, y'all listen, my son had orientation today. He's going into high school, so I have to go.
All right.
I am
Let's call
really
it quits,
glad
y'all.
to have heard your experience, Christine. Thank you for sharing. Ilhan, thank you for your contribution.
Absolutely.
So,
Jackie, can we get a motion to adjourn?
Sure. I'll move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Do we have a second? All right.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Oh, before we go,
yes.
we need another. Let's schedule another date for meeting.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you.
August the 29th is the Jewish cohort. So we have been doing every other week. So we're looking at sometime in September or what? What's good for everybody? The first Thursday in September?
Let me get through the first week of school, and we have Labor Day the first Monday of September. So how do we want to handle that?
So
what date is that?
What is that?
September 4th. And the first day of school is next week, yes.
6th. So Thursday is the 7th.
And that's going to be a short week, so I don't know how difficult that's going to be for everyone, or we'll be fine. I'm just going to leave it up for discussion.
Let's set it, and if we have to alter it, then we will. We did miss Joe today.
Okay.
So he might have conflict, but I don't want us to leave without at least having something scheduled. So,
and I'll make sure that I send out the reminder. Okay.
Okay. Wonderful.
Thank you all for everything.
Thank you for joining us, everybody.
All right.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Hold on.